let's talk about efforts being made by the CBN to curb POS fraud in Nigeria, as the Central Bank of Nigeria has approved the second TSA license for Nigeria. It has approved that for the technological platform called Unified Payment. Now, the essence of this is to ensure that the issues related to financial crimes and every transaction that has to do with POS are being curtailed or managed in Nigeria. We're being joined by our special guest who will provide his insight as regards this development. We're being joined by Orji Chigozie Udemezue, who is the managing consultant, CEO of Flame Academy and Consulting Limited. Glad to have you join us this morning.
I think the central bank and the government of the federation, they are all making very hasty efforts to see how to manage our, hitherto failure to take advantage of, relatively high oil price to enhance FX inflow into Nigeria, and also our long neglected effort to diversify our export earnings through other means like solid minerals and agri export and so on. Focusing only on oil, and it's hurting us so badly right now. And here we go again, trying to raise Diaspora Fund, $10 billion, which is like a bond, just a way of borrowing money in another way, because it's getting increasingly difficult to access borrowings, from the international community because of our increasing high debt service to revenue ratio and the unsustainability of our, existing borrowings at this point. So the government is thinking hard to see how Nigerians, over 20 million Nigerians in other countries in the world, can rally around the country to, buy into this bond. The nature of the bond, the purposes and everything are yet to be rolled out. And I understand that Nigeria is seeking for fund managers or asset managers who will help in this transaction, promote it, sell it, and manage, the bond payments and so on. So it's just a way to raise their money by borrowing, which for me is not going to solve this problem on a long-term basis. It could just, for me, be an ad hoc way to manage the depreciating naira. Of course, when the news came out, without people understanding what it's all about, there was some kind of response by the market, making naira appreciate a bit in the past few days. But when the concept is fully understood, then we'll wait to know what the market response will be. For me, it's a good policy, finding ways to raise money. But how will this money be managed? How much confidence does the average Nigerian have in the ability of Nigeria's public sector to manage funds raised for the purposes they were raised? Because what we've seen over the years is that the public sector continues to run their businesses carelessly, squander money, continue to spend, as if everything is okay with Nigeria, and then we resort to private sector funds to solve, compelling problems. That can never continue. We must find a way to make our public service systems very efficient and effective. That's the long-term solution. Manage our, recurrent expenditure as well as other, expenses that the government runs. Making governance, very transparent and responsible, and then instituting accountability in our systems. We cannot keep squandering public money and keep hoping to borrow and borrow more and more to cure our issues. All the debts we are amassing, we already, running into trillions of, tens of trillions of naira in debt, or billions, almost 100 billion right now. How do we intend to pay? So the Diaspora Fund is just a nice way to say we are selling bond to raise more debt in the market. But if truly this bond is meant to be bought by Nigerians in diaspora, the question is, how much confidence do these over 20 million Nigerians in other parts of the world, how much confidence do they have in Nigerian government as it were? Reminding us about what the things that happened during the last election, when these same diasporans, made so much effort hoping that the electoral process will be transparent. And you and I know how that exercise went. So coming from that history, do you expect these diasporans who have always inflowed so much money to family and friends for one thing or the other, do we expect them to forsake their personal issues or home issues in their families and invest their money instead in government instruments to raise money for Nigerian government, whom they may not hold such a very high esteem? Anyway, I wish Nigeria well, and I hope that the bond sells. By the time the bond is rated and so on, and they do all the road shows and everything, I hope that the diasporans will buy into this scheme. But for me, it is not yet Uhuru. It doesn't call for jubilation yet until the terms and conditions of these bonds are announced and the purpose clearly made. Because most times when we go to borrow, we mention infrastructure, agricultural investment, and so on. But these funds come and they get diverted to other uses. So for me, it's an ad hoc arrangement to solve our FX inflow challenges. But only time will tell how much that can succeed. Thank you.
So for the investments, it's going to be channeled into infrastructure, healthcare, education, and then entrepreneurship. Would you rather it's a different sector or it's channeled towards something else? Would that make it more guaranteed for the investors to recoup their funds?
Well, we always brandish these critical sectors in the economy when we want to raise money. And because we know that these are the sectors that will drive quantum growth in the economy. Entrepreneurship is very critical to drive economic growth. Agriculture has been so neglected since we discovered oil. So it's a critical sector to enable us drive food production, food security, and drive inflation down too. But how much are we willing to deal with that when we are still having herdsmen issues, bandits, and so on, driving away farmers, from their farmland? And we, up till now, we appear to be, handicapped in dealing with these issues. So all these sectors they mentioned, healthcare, Nigeria is still joking when it comes to healthcare. Nigerians still do health tourism, traveling everywhere else in the world, even to Ghana, to India, to China, to Germany, to handle major ailments. And yet, Nigerians in diaspora are the medical doctors dealing with these issues, even in America and elsewhere. So something is wrong with our governance system in our country. And until we deal with that, deal with the structure of this economy, both fiscal structure and governance structure, until we deal with this, we can continue to make noise about agriculture, healthcare, education, infrastructure, and so on, without dealing with the issues. We just pay lip service to these things to be able to raise money. There's hardly any time government wants to raise any money for whatever frivolous reason without them, brandishing before us these critical sectors. So it's one thing to parade these sectors as the basis for the diaspora fundraising. Then it's a different thing to actually deploy the funds raised in these sectors, where Nigerians will see visible, development in these sectors, where, for example, we have a world-class medical facility, maybe in Abuja, or even in each of the 6 geographical zones in Nigeria, where you can have world-class dialysis centers, kidney handling centers, liver handling centers, heart disease handling centers, where Nigerians don't need to fly again to India or wherever for surgeries that can help them survive some ailments. So until we see this infrastructure well run, not the usual medical system that we see here, government medical center that are poorly funded, until we see that on ground, we can't believe this government or any government at all in Nigeria. Nigeria is still running on 4,000 megawatts of electricity, or even less than that. How do you convince investors that these monies will be useful or be productive when they are deployed in Nigeria? To show you are serious, deal with the power sector first of all. That's when the medical sectors can work at very efficient level. So we are still struggling with getting power right. So what do we mean when we say infrastructure? Beyond roads that we see flashes here and there, There's no way Nigeria can move forward without squarely dealing with poor electricity supply in this country. But it's dragging everything else down, both from healthcare to education to infrastructure and so on. Without power, we're going nowhere. So any president that must convince Nigerians to put down their money in any kind of fundraising, diaspora or whatever, must show a strong resolve to deal with the corruption that's holding down the power sector and these other sectors that they mentioned in their borrowing plan. So for me, it's just sensationalism for, at this moment. We need to see real work being done. Naira dollar value will continue to dance, up and down until we open up all the inflows, until we pay serious attention to non-oil exports, and very importantly, until we decisively remove petroleum product importation from our list of dollar demand for imports. It's a shame that Nigeria at this age and time is still importing most of its needed petroleum products. Thank God for Dangote Refinery and a few others, but are they really providing a solution right now? Because the likes of NNPC are still holding tight, what they're holding, in a very opaque and non-transparent manner.
All right. Let me find out from you, because earlier you made a submission that the effort being made by the federal government to shore up its diaspora remittances is just a short-term initiative. I would like to know, because in the long term, it's also important to talk about the solutions. What do you presume, or in your own opinion, are the solutions to increasing or boosting the FX inflow into the country in the long term? Let me lay emphasis on that. Then in your submission, I also like you to talk about the products, the services, or the sectors that should also drive this.
The market authorities in the FX market in Nigeria must understand that there is speculation in every market. But to minimize volatilities and speculation, make sure that market structures are very well laid out. There is proper regulation for every market. And there is no wanton or arbitrary allocation of available FX resources in this country. You will not go and grab foreign exchange from an exporter at a very low price and sell to a friend of the house in CBN or the presidency at a very obscure rate, low rate, and the person will arbitrage and make so much money, more than the exporter. So in the immediate term, just like the reform that the government is running currently, which is commendable, allow, suppliers of FX a free will to sell their FX in any market they deem appropriate. And central bank, for God's sake, should stop forcing rates down by depleting our, external reserve. But every time they do that, they can achieve a quick fix solution for a month or two, and then we go back to a worse scarcity of the dollar. As our FX reserve continues to fall towards 30 billion or even moving towards 29 billion, we are creating more panic and more reason for speculative tendencies. So that must stop. And central bank must continue their current policy of allocating FX only to decent requests and purposeful users of that commodity. So having said that, on a long-term basis, Nigeria must step back and reason out how to raise non-oil export on a regular and serious manner. We only pay lip service to that whenever we have oil price crash and so on. And we begin to sing praises about non-oil export. So while the oil price is good, and we are selling oil, even though the quantity of oil we sell is still a problem right now, we must continue to deliberately, in every state of the federation, where we produce one thing or the other, whether it is the grains from the north or the vegetables from the south and east, the rice from Taraba, Abakaliki, and the rest of them. How do we produce enough to, first of all, substitute what we import? Because Nigeria's problem is that we bring in little FX and we need so much to import even food. But if we increase productivity in these sectors, agri-sector, one is that the amount of food we import will reduce, freeing up FX, making it available at better prices. Then we can even produce some things more than enough for our local market, and then we export them. Some time ago, Anambra was reported to have exported a sizable amount of vegetable, and so much money came from it. So if we boost export with the export authorities conducting seminars in all the states of the Federation, helping school leavers, unemployed Nigerians understand the route to the market, global market, to export cassava, plantain, chips, or whatever. Despite our low capacity to process this food, we can still export them raw the way we're doing currently and make some effects. But when we can get investors to invest in post-harvest technology, we can even earn much more dollars. Instead of allowing the plantain to spoil, we can, dry it and do some kind of cakes or whatever with it, and then we package it very well and sell. Tomatoes, why do we still import the tomato paste when we have so much tomato in our market, in our farms, wasting away? Is it yam chips, cassava chips, plantain chips, groundnut, and all kinds of things that we can export? Even, bitter cola, and there's so much going on under the table. Government can aggregate effort to make these things official, have commodity boards, export zones, or export promoting events that make the other Nigerian aware of how to export. So we have more opening for dollar inflow. So that must happen. Then for foreign investments, we must deal with our local issue of insecurity. Insecurity is damaging agricultural investment in this country. It's damaging tourism, where we could earn billions of dollars in a year. It's damaging real sectoral investments. People, even in the oil and gas sector, people still live in Ghana and they work in Nigeria because of insecurity. That is throwing away opportunity for FX inflow. So there's a lot we can do in-house first. It's not enough to rush to raise the foreign bonds and whatever. What have you done locally to improve local investments and even foreign direct and portfolio investment in the country? So far, we have done well in bringing portfolio investors, but their funds can also hurt us when they mature on a short-term basis and the investors want to pull their money back to their countries. So we need more direct investment and local investment to produce enough goods to reduce our import and ramp up export. Very importantly, again, we must close out importation of refined petroleum products as quickly as possible, because from the records, that alone takes more than 40% of our FX inflows or FX earnings. It's a major issue. So we must deal with this on medium to long-term basis to solve this problem. Open up FX inflows through investments into Nigeria where security has been dealt with. Remember, that's my point. And then ensure that market regulations encourage investors to bring in their money. Even the diasporans should be allowed to bring in their money the way they want. You can't force a diasporan to bring their money and you exchange at your government rate when the parallel market rate is even higher. But thank God that the rates have almost closed up, which is a good reform by the central bank. If they maintain that closed range, to remove speculation and arbitrage, then over time things will get better. So central bank should not be in a hurry to see Naira trade at below 1,000 to $1. It may be hurtful, but that's the painful thing we have to go through over time. And gradually, we get it right. Spending more dollar, depleting our external reserve to make a forced quick fix is never a good solution in the long run.
From this discussion, you were talking about the investment and then the credibility of the investment fund. But this is not going to be handled by government or those in public service, as those who want fund managers have been asked to bid for this. So what would you advise the government to do, even as it has asked fund managers to bid for the management of this $10 billion Diaspora Fund?
All right. Government is bringing fund managers to show that this fund will be private sector driven and managed. But who is the ultimate user of the funds raised? So the fund manager is only a vehicle. It's only a platform that government plans to use to raise this money. But at the end of the day, when you raise money to run an economy, you're raising whether you're using treasury instruments like bonds or treasury bills for short-term instruments. The whole idea is that you're raising money for government to spend. That's the point. Government is going to use fund managers who are private sector driven to market, package, sell, and collect these funds. But at the end of the day, the fund managers will hand the funds over to appropriate government institution that will spend the money. So that's my point in saying that the investors, how much confidence do they have in the Nigerian system to use this money effectively? Or will it just mean accumulating more debt and leaving it for the future governments and our children yet to be born to face the consequence of paying these debts, even in the face of huge and unsustainable debt portfolio we're carrying right now? Even our debt to GDP ratio is rising now very fast towards 50%, from a hitherto 20%, before now. So it shows that our debt is mounting very, very fast. And the economy has not been so structured to produce enough funding, enough activities, enough investments to enable us harvest or harness, tax revenue, tariffs, and so on to pay back our debt and even stop borrowing in the future. So there may be a crisis of confidence as we continue to borrow to solve our problem. So borrowing to force the Naira to trade at a better price is not a long-term solution. That $10 billion will come in, and trust me, maybe in less than 5-6 months, is squandered trying to defend the Naira, and the problem continues. Meanwhile, a $10 billion debt have been amassed for under 10 years. So the solution is to make the economy that is so blessed by God produce its own dollar. Because we can do that. While we continue to pursue oil and gas dollar, let's step back and get very serious with other things I've mentioned earlier, the non-oil sources, even the solid mineral that is being stolen everywhere in the north, from Bauchi to, let me not call more states. But we have so much solid minerals in the north that are being tapped without any, account being given by those, explorers. Can we deal with this? Then how does every state government take charge of the resources in their states and not just going to Abuja to go and collect a rent, called FAC allocation? So governors become lazy. Our governors at 6 states of this country should become like entrepreneurs, harnessing the resources in their states and making them available for us to consume locally, to reduce our imports, and then packaging some of them for export to nearby African countries even. With AFTA being implemented, Nigeria has a big platform to be a major supplier of several commodities to Africa, and then Europe and so on. So these are things we must face, not just go and borrow. Every fool can borrow to solve their problem. But it takes, a wise person or, to think like an entrepreneur to produce value to solve that problem. Because borrowing does not, come very easy. It comes with burdens, interest payments, and issues of interest rate volatility and so on. So borrowing is the easiest thing Nigeria can do. Whether they're calling asset managers and so on doesn't impress me. The important thing is that we're going back again to borrow more, because maybe IMF cannot give us the amount of money we want. World Bank cannot. So let's talk to our people, use emotion to get them to lend to us. But beyond that borrowing, all the very useful resources you have in your country, how much have you harnessed and managed them to avoid future borrowing and to ensure that your debt level is sustainable and you're able to produce enough finance, enough revenue to fund your existing debt? So we keep borrowing more and more. When do we start paying back?
Let's move away from the issue of diaspora remittances now, and let's look at effort being made by the CBN to curb POS fraud in Nigeria. The Central Bank of Nigeria has licensed or has awarded the second PTSA license to Unify Payments. Now, talk to us about the significance of this move and why it's important for all POS transactions to pass through a licensed PTSA platform.
Okay, the payment terminal service aggregator is a kind of system, more like a clearinghouse, to ensure efficient settlement of transactions, in the financial system in Nigeria. Before the award of this license to Unified Payment, which is owned by very reputable banks in Nigeria, the NIPS, that's Nigeria Interbank Settlement System, NIBSS, have been the overburdened institution that handle payment settlements in Nigeria. You have NIPS Instant Transfer, NIPS that, NIPS that. So that platform has been bothered, even though they've been doing well so far, but you find that a lot of, hitches have always occurred in the payment system in Nigeria. You have cases where you do a POS transaction or even interbank transaction. It may show you success, transactions are successful, but monies don't exchange. Sometimes money will leave the payment initiator, leave his account, but it does not get to the end point. So there have been a lot of inefficiencies, delays, poor reports, delayed alert, and so on, or even delayed settlement in that window, causing huge money.
All right, there's been a bit of disconnection. We do hope that our guest will be able to join us again so we can continue the conversation. But he was talking earlier about the coming of a second payment terminal service aggregator, which is a unified payment that has been licensed by the CBN to tackle the issue of POS fraud. Femi, you agree with me that POS operators have increased in their numbers in recent times, possibly due to the fact that when people go to ATMs, they hardly can find cash there. So the go-to now is POS operators. And they've often been the belief that when fraud is committed using the POS, it is hard to trace. But with these now, it seemed like it's going to improve that. But he was talking about inefficiencies because one agency or one company has been burdened with payment terminal service aggregator, which is the NIBSS. With the coming now of unified payment, do you think there's going to be some improvements now and maybe competition?
We must understand that the POS transaction has become an everyday thing in Nigeria. And this is due to the fact that access to funds when you go to ATM or banks, has been challenging. The POS is like a retail kind of outlet that is just readily available when you need this fund. So a lot of Nigerians find it convenient to patronize them. And over time, it's been like a source of employment for some people, especially in the remote areas where you discover that most banks do not have presence. When I mean presence, physical presence, where you have ATM points and all that. So people easily go to that. So as a result of that, over the years, POS transactions has tripled, if not doubled, over time. And because of that, the volume of transaction that takes place via one platform, which is NIBSS, it's been challenging. And stakeholders over the years, they've raised concern over this. And that's why the CBN is also thinking in this light to come up with the second PTSA platform, which is what has been granted to Unify Payments. So this will further complements the efforts to prove transparency into the system and also to ensure that the bottleneck associated with financial transactions are also eliminated. It's also a way to also be able to track some of these transactions, because you are also aware that a lot of fraudulent activities are also being presumed to be carried out via these platforms. So by introducing this second PTSA license to Unify Payment, it brings efficiency and also a way for the CBN to be able to track some of these transactions.
Okay, thank you, Femi. Thankfully, our guest is back and we can continue the conversation with him. All right, you were on a line of thoughts talking about the license that has been granted now to Unified Payment as a second PTSA. So, what are the benefits of this? How will this impact payment transactions in Nigeria?
Oh, yes. I expect that with this second license issued, the burden on NIBSS will definitely reduce, and there will be some kind of collaboration and partnership between these two license holders to ensure a more efficient transaction settlement in the financial system in Nigeria. No country can joke with its financial system. If we can have a system that facilitates transaction settlement and boosts confidence, then we can achieve a greater level of financial inclusion and mobilize more funds, which are provided in the economy as investment to the real sector of the economy, which of course will support our desire to become a $1 trillion economy in the next few years. So certainly, it's a positive development. And then with Unified Payment having some years of experience in transaction handling and settlement, I believe that this will create some confidence in the system and enhance settlement of transactions on any platform at all, because this new platform is to support fintech, digital banking, modern payment systems, and so on, while the NIBSS may still focus on traditional interbank settlements and clearing of banking transactions, checks, traveler check, and all kinds of payments, transfers, and so on. That will continue to be efficient, while the Unified Payments may have the technology and the scale to handle the more technical, more dangerous, in quote, or riskier, digital banking payments. A lot of fraud are happening among the POS people because there's no serious aggregation system, that also ensures minimum KYC for payment, makers in the economy. So a lot of these, I don't want to call names, of these POS systems or fintech setups don't do proper KYC. And then fraudsters find their platforms very easy to invade people's accounts, to make all kinds of fraudulent transactions and create panic in the financial system. So now with the Unified Payment coming on board, there should be some minimum KYC for people who participate in the platform. Otherwise, you will not be allowed to deal through those platforms. Just like in banking, all the banks are united in the way they regulate minimum KYC. If you can't open an account in Bank A because you don't have a requirement for account opening, if you go to Bank B, you cannot still open an account because there is some regulation going on, driven by the regulators to show that minimal entry to the system must be ensured before people begin to play in that system. So with this license, the POS, digital banking, all people that use APIs, application programming interfaces, blockchain technology, even what do you call them again? Digital money, Bitcoin, and the rest of them. Once there is some kind of regulation, the tendency to use them to commit fraud will reduce. So I think it's the right policy in the right direction by the central bank. And if they can sustain it and ensure it works, there will be a bigger confidence in the Nigerian financial system, which, by the way, should be a hub for the African financial market. Nigeria being the largest economy, even though that position is being threatened by a few other countries with our woes in our naira depreciation, the value of our GDP may soon drop, such that we may lose that position as the biggest economy in Africa. But God helping us, we hope this government will step back quickly and do the things I've mentioned earlier to ensure that we open up FX inflows and ensure that the economy retains its size, and then payment infrastructures like what is being done now are strengthened to improve confidence in our financial system and therefore ramp up capital availability.
Okay, we're still talking about technology, internet has, hampered that conversation. But rightly, we're still talking about, the impact of this policy on POS transactions, and he's trying to emphasize on the need for transparency. In fact, I wanted to find out from him what would be the impact of this policy on service providers who will have to route all their transactions through these platforms, before now. But I learned his back, so I can shift the conversation back to him. Glad to know you're still there with us.
I'm using my local line to provide a hotspot for my data services. And sometimes you have call coming into that line, even though you call the call, it might have disrupted your discussion. Forgive me about that. Hopefully, I may soon, find other platforms to give me better data availability. The city on 1,000 hills. All right. Okay, so
I need you to address this issue. If you can hear me now, I need you to quickly talk about what will be the impact of this policy on service providers, payment service providers, who will have to route all their transactions through these two platforms.
I think it's a win-win for everybody. The payment service banks, their agents, operators, and so on, only have to be a bit more disciplined in the way they onboard customers. This system will no longer accept anything goes. There must be, like I said earlier, minimum requirement for you to accept transactions on your platform. Once you understand that that has to be done, nothing is lost. You can, over time, they can even do more volumes of transactions because confidence would have been boosted and people will relax, just like people will trust banking transactions because the banking system is well secured. You can't pass through kidnap money or terrorism money or fraud money and all of that through the banking system easily, because there's minimum requirement for know your customer. So all that's going to happen is that those who come to those platforms with bad intentions to commit fraud and to invade people's account may no longer have easy access, which is, by the way, good for the economy. But everyone who has genuine transaction to pass through will have a boosted confidence to do that. And you find that the PSBs, the payment service banks, fintech companies, digital bank service providers, and all of those technologized financial service providers will have more confidence to pass the transaction through a system that must ensure minimum standard. And in the medium to long run, everybody will gain. With confidence being raised, more volumes of transactions will be enhanced. But then bankers have to do more work to sustain their business, because there will be tendency for people to now prefer people avoid some payment service bank system because of fintech company, because of the high level of fraud in their platforms. So when we assume that this fraud is minimized or curtailed, by the way, there's also fraud in the banking system. You just to minimize it and curtail it. Once it is done, bankers can no longer sit pretty and claim to be the only players in the financial system. They have to work harder to sustain patronage on their platform, because today, people are actually preferring these POS or fintech companies in making their payments, than the banking system, which is a big issue. But at the end, I think it's a win-win for everyone, as long as the financial system is being ramped up and financial inclusion is improving, both formal and informal inclusion. Thank you.
All right, quickly before we let you go, can you in a minute talk about the preference of POS to traditional banks or even the use of ATM? Could it be as a result of the banks not actually, most times when you go to the ATMs, you don't find cash, but you always find the POS operators with cash. And there have been some conspiracy theory that this seems to be an arrangement between the banks and the POS operators. What do you make of this and the implication on cost of transaction? In 1 minute, please.
I've also, on my own, wondered why banks are failing to provide very efficient services on their platforms like the ATM and so on, letting people be left with only the option of doing POSs. People have also alleged that even the POS system, banks make money through their transactions more than what they make in ATM. So all those suspicions and collusions must be dealt with. So banks are not being very, I'm sorry to say this, not being very transparent on why they're not able to provide efficient service through their ATMs. Why are they letting people now resort to POSs? Why would you have to draw amounts of only 5,000 per transaction or 10,000 and so on? And the bank withdrawals are also getting more and more difficult. Why did we put up these ATMs in the first place? There's some kind of collusion going on, and banks seem to be concerned only about how much money they make in the end and not how efficient the financial system is. It's a matter the central bank has to look into. But with this second license given to Unified Payments, even though Unified Payments is still owned by banks, we will see a situation whereby the playing ground will be more level and more competition that will benefit the customers or clients will be seen. Because when there is a fair competition, the consumer gets better service. So we hope that will be the future of the financial payment systems in Nigeria. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Orji Chigozie Udemezue, who joins us live from Kigali this morning. He is managing consultant and CEO of Flame Academy and Consulting Limited. Many thanks for your time with us this morning.
All right, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Early exchange, shaping policy, advancing development.